It is time for Formula 3 qualifying from Bahrain International in round 2 of our season. 30 drivers all ready to set laps at the limit as they battle for the 2 points for pole in a qualifying which sets the grid for both races this weekend. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be really close if we are going off what we saw in practice, which wasn't a lot, but we're going to be in for a very interesting qualifying session. Alongside me in the commentary box, we've still got Tom Cairns, and also joining us now is Nathan Richards, as you can see as well. And Tom, well, it's going to be really interesting to see whether Kamara is going to be able to continue his form from Australia and also from practice earlier on.
Yes, Kamara, who has been in good form after his performances in Australia, hoping to bag 2 poles out of 2. He took pole in Australia. He'll be hoping to make it 2 from 2 here in Bahrain. There is Nicholas Solov, 3 times a race winner in this series last year. What can he do in the Red Bull livery machine? Hopefully he'll get the job done here in Sakir. There are, of course, 28 other drivers who will be looking to snap at their heels and take those 2 championship points away. And even if they can't, well, there's always been in the top 12 at the end of the session to be in the fray for a good haul of points by the end of this race weekend.
The night is on as the drivers head into the fast lane and the Formula 3 traffic jam begins. And Richie, well, this is going to be quite a lot of fun, won't it?
Yeah, it certainly will. I mean, Bahrain is a track known by pretty much all of these drivers. You know, a lot of them have done testing here or they've driven here once before. So it's a track where I actually expect the Toms to be a lot closer than they were in Australia. I really think it'll be a close qualifying session. And, you know, around some of these sectors, especially sector 2, when you go from turns 5 down towards turn 10, the amount of time you can gain and lose there is going to be crucial for these drivers. So they've got to make sure that, if anywhere, it's sector 2 where they can perfect it the most. But, I mean, Kamara is doing such a good job. I mean, I don't think we can really write him off from pole position again, can we? Because he is a really good driver and suited well for his debut here in this series.
Yeah, the Australia performance we were discussing earlier on, super impressive. 45 minutes of practice, was able to top that. Was able then to take pole position, had a crash in the sprint race due to no fault of his own, but then in the feature race, in the wet conditions, he absolutely dominated that race as well. So it was great to see, and it was great to watch. The Tridents just waiting in the pit lane as everyone else heads out onto the circuit. But could Brazil have another Formula 1 driver if Kamara continues with this performance? He still will, of course, have Formula 2 to go, he'll hope, next season. We've got Freddie Slater. As a reminder, if you weren't with us in practice, Freddie Slater is a driver who is filling in for this round for an AIX seat that does not have a full-time driver. Bedrin, though, 4th in the championship, so that car still does have some good performance if they are able to find the right drivers.
We're just looking to see on circuit as we'll watch the drivers dice it out for track position at this early stage. Now, they do need a couple of prep laps or reconnaissance laps before they start giving it full power. And you can just see that they don't want to be hanging around the traffic too. There's even someone going off circuit, which is legally not really what you're supposed to be doing, but I suppose he's trying to make his way through the traffic when there's like 2 or 3 drivers going side by side, going at much slower speed than the driver's just gone off was doing. Then he may have a case for it. But I hope we don't get any incidents in this session. There are 30 drivers after all on this 5.4 kilometer circuit. It shouldn't really cause too many problems. We have seen before in the past at other tracks where track position has been near on impossible to find to get the lap in that you want.
Yeah. Definitely. Carry on, Omi.
I was just going to ask you as well, Richie, in terms of we've had to go to a 2-part qualifying format as well at certain rounds. Of course, Monaco as always, but we're doing it a little bit more, including Monza now.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think most tracks probably should have a 2-part qualifying because you've got 30 cars on track. I mean, the Formula 1 cars, that can get a little bit hectic, and there's only 20. You're adding another third onto that to make it 30 here in Formula 3. I think it is too many, because look at them here down to turn 1. Many of them going side by side into the first corner, some people, if they're new to Formula 3, might be thinking this is like a slow-mo replay of like lap 1 or something, because they're all heading into turn 1 side by side, and no one could really find that perfect track position. And I mean, it's probably clever here by the Trident cars to go out a little bit out of sync from the others, but the only issue they've got to keep in mind now is once they go around again for their second 8 lap, which we presume they'll do, they might have a few fast cars catching up, so they've got to be careful not to get in the way and not to block others, because that can even get more manic than it already is.
Yeah, it is always very chaotic when these Formula 2 drivers are out there on their outlaps, and sometimes going alone with just your teammates can be very, very helpful. We're on board with Britain's Freddie Slater, reigning Italian F4 champion, set to have a dual campaign in GP3 and Freca this year. He's just currently building up before he gets pushing on, and it's going to be extraordinary. It's going to be very interesting to see how he gets on in this qualifying session. Practice, we couldn't get much of data on him as we couldn't on anyone due to the less running we saw, but from testing he was in the top 10 all 3 days, Tom, so he's definitely a driver who could be in the mix.
I could imagine so as well. I'd love to see how Freddie Slater gets on, because he was by far the quickest of the AIX drivers. Javier Segura and Nicola Marinaggi were down towards the back, but I think Slater could be in the fray to be on reverse grid pole for tomorrow's sprint race. There are 2 races throughout this weekend. The top 12 qualifiers will be reversed for tomorrow's sprint race, and then the whole grid of what gets determined by today, subject to grid penalties of course, will determine the grid for Sunday's feature race, which is slightly longer, a few laps longer than what the sprint race holds.
Yeah, absolutely, as we're about to get pushing and going around this circuit. Gerald G will lead us away onto the push laps. He has DRS open. You have 3 DRS zones around this 5.412 kilometer racetrack, a circuit that, as we mentioned, the drivers have had testing at, so they know this circuit very, very well indeed, which is why we had less running in practice. But now it's time to get some answers in terms of qualifying and to see who is looking good when it comes to this season. We discussed earlier in practice about the fact that we didn't get a proper reading into how the pace levels are in Australia. We definitely will be doing so, Richie, here in qualifying at Bahrain.
Yeah, we certainly will, and I think this is one of the great tracks as well for qualifying. I've driven the Formula 3 car on a Sato Corsa here around Bahrain, and it is a really fun track to go around in qualifying. A bit of a lock-up there into turn 8 there for Gerard Z, but of course it's very common down to turn 8 to get a lock-up, and that is the last thing you need, because it pretty much ruins all of that pace that you have in that car, because a lock-up is really, really crucial around here, especially when you're heading towards turn 9 and 10. You head into there with a lock-up and with a bit of a flat spot, you're going to lose so much time there. So it's one thing that the drivers have got to keep in courses, their tyres. Make sure they're good enough to keep going and going. Because if you ruin them on your first lap, you're going to have to go in again and get a new set, and that is not what you want to do.
So we've had a couple of drivers make their way to the fast sector so far. You've got McLaren Junior Martini Stenchon, who is the quickest one in the first and also in the second so far. Gerard G definitely pushing on directly in front in the number 16 High-Tech as he pushes on towards the final corner on the second. Final 2 corners, but it's only 1 corner that they are worrying about, and it's turn number 14. 15 is the little kink, and then you go up through the gears, bring it up to the line, and we're going to get an idea on what lap time he has managed, unless he's going to come into the pit lane. He is going to come into the pit lane, so not happy with that lap time. And I think most of the field are going to be coming into the pit lane as well. Definitely if your name is, if you are part of the High-Tech team. So they don't want anything to do with the first one. They're going to come back on later on as Voisin crosses the line. He goes to the top.
Yep. So Voisin on top for the time being. There's plenty of drivers still yet to set some times. We're looking at Alessandro Giusti in the MP Motorsport car that is in the blue colours. I think that's because of the FFSA that he is part of. Giusti going over the lines of 150.877 for the Frenchman. Nice lap indeed. There's plenty of other challenges out there. We're looking at Charlie Wirtz going down the back straight towards turn 11. Can he be on terms with Giusti by sector 2? Championship leader Rafael Camara, who is a few hundred metres back in the sister Trident. They're hoping to build on a good start to the season for them. Teams champions of this series in 2021 and drivers champions with Gabriel Bortoleto in 2023 and Leo Fornaroni in 2024. Yeah, this is Verts coming towards turn 14 now. There is a car ahead of him, but it's well out of the way. He may be able to pick up a toe if he is lucky. The Austrian in the number 6 Trident exiting the 15th and final corner of this clockwise configuration of Sakir over the line. It's not going to be the fastest, but it's good enough only for 16th. So Verts has some work to do. I don't know whether he had a lock-up on that run for the Austrian during the course of that lap, but it's certainly not a very good lap time by his standards.
Into the pit lane came Kamara. It's Solov right now at the front ahead of Ho. This is a replay of Gerard G locking up at turn number 8.
Yeah, not ideal at all there for Gerard G, and of course that cost him a lot of time and also cost him a lot there onto his tyres. But I've got to say there, of course, Solov being at the top, I wouldn't say I'm that surprised, because he is one of the most experienced drivers here in this championship, as we do see here. Yeah, Charlie Verts, I think that's into turn 10, having a lock-up, and we also did see Callum Voisin there running a bit wide on the exit of turn 4 and kicking up a little bit of gravel. But of course, first lap in, we are going to see drivers make some mistakes, and to be fair, I expected a lot more mistakes from the drivers here in the field. And when we look at our representative lap times, we have our top 22 separated by 1.5 seconds, so not too shabby here from the drivers for their first runs. The top 16 being separated by just over a second, but of course those times will fall down. But Sullivan Ho at the top, very competitive lap times, with those behind over 3/10 back from them.
Absolutely, that's Walton in 3rd, Giusti in 4th, Ugo Gachuku is in 5th. As we see them all come into the pit lane, and they'll be preparing for the next run that will come, and it will be when the circuit is even better. You have a lap time that was a couple of drivers not setting lap times, as we mentioned. They decided to come straight back to the pit lane. They are Gerard G, Rafael Kamara, Martini Estension, Joshua Dufek, Tim Traminit, and then the 2 Van Amersfoort of Dominguez, and our winner from the sprint in Melbourne, Santiago Ramos. GSD part, of course, of the Williams Academy, and he is a driver that will definitely be looking to try and impress this season, after definitely showing glimpses of talent and pace in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine last year.
It's nice to see that Giusti is part of the Williams program. We recently saw the Formula 3 champion of 2022, Victor Martin, being taken on in Williams' Racing Academy poll. Very, very nicely done by him. There is Brando Bedoya, the son of former Formula 1 driver Luca Bedoya, who had quite an eventful time of it in Melbourne. He had a spin in qualifying, I remember, that saw him crash at turn 2 in Australia, which compromised his running for the weekend. But, you know, with there being more room for error here, unlike what we saw in Albert Park, I'd imagine he'll be able to push on and get a really good lap in here. There's Nicholas Solif in the number 12 Campos racing car. His teammates being Taz into the public second, Mary Boyer, who are 7th and 8th. So Campos doing a fine job so far, getting their cars up as high as they are so far. And we look at the somewhat of a tranquility of Sakir with the palm trees as well. It's a lovely setting, actually, isn't it?
Lovely, absolutely lovely. A great location for the race. I'm not going to say the same words that Joshua Birch said. That's only reserved for Australia. That's only reserved for
What
Australia.
did he say?
It's a great place for a race. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure I heard that quite a few times actually from him. Now you say that, I heard it about 4 times.
Yeah, we do hear that come from his mouth every time we go to Australia, about 4 or 5 times across so many different sessions. It is quite wild. He does love saying that. So I wasn't going to repeat that and bring it over to Bahrain. We'll leave that. We'll leave that to next year when we go back to Australia as well. So drivers heading back out onto the circuit, and it'll be time for another run as these drivers now look to try find more time and build upon what they've already managed, Tom.
Yes, the track temperature is going down, as is the air temperature, hence why the lap times will come down, as will the drivers who are coming out on circuit. Now, in case you're new to Formula 3, we do see drivers go out at the same time, whereas some decide to go for a gap in the traffic to avoid being held up by anyone. The last thing you want to be doing is impeding a driver, which would go towards a grid drop, which could really hurt your race weekend. If you do get a grid penalty on the back of what you do in qualifying, it would be applied to your grid position for the sprint race and not for the feature. So if you, for instance, if you ended up fastest in the session and you impede someone, it would only compromise your sprint race grid position and not your feature race grid position. So I'm not saying it's a free hit, to go and do that to someone. They shouldn't do that anyway, because they have penalty points which they can have on their license, these drivers. We have seen in Formula 2 a few years ago where we had 3 drivers accumulate 12 penalty points over the course of the season, and they were forced to miss a round each. Hopefully that won't happen this year in Formula 3. I don't think it will do, but as you well know, we've seen Martini Estenchon, who we were discussing him about in practice this morning, Omi, that he missed a round last year at Silverstone because he competed in another championship at that circuit without the approval from the FIA. If he's going to be fighting for the championship this season, I highly doubt he can afford to miss any rounds.
Yeah, he cannot indeed, and it's the expectation when you're a returning driver and when you've got talent like he has, you know that you need to try and make sure that you keep yourself in the title hunt, because this Formula 3 Championship is hyper competitive. You've got loads of new drivers, loads of new talents who have arrived, and you're going to want to get as much as early points as you can get, and definitely try to take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Stenchon with DRS and into turn number 1 with 15 minutes and 30 seconds to go. Quickly, the order goes: Solov, Ho, Wharton, GST, Ugachukwu, Nail, into Pruvizak, Boyer, Stromstead, and Noel Leon is our top 10. That is all yet to change, and Wojcik, as it stands, would have reverse grid pole as the top 12 gets reversed for tomorrow, but still 15 minutes for that all to be scrambled around, and it surely will, with how close the margins are.
Yeah, certainly. The margins are always close in Formula 3, especially around this track as drivers are going for a second out lap here. Of course, a couple of overtakes there into turn 4. Just wanted to try and get a bit of better track position. And I've got to say, following on from Australia, one driver I've been quite impressed with is Tsanopol Intrapuvizak, who's done a really good job. Of course, as pretty much a back marker last season all the way throughout, but this season has had a really good launch forward, of course, changing team into Campos, and now doing a really, really good job. So hopefully we can see him feature in that top 10 for the sprint and the feature race. There's a few cars there just making their way into turn on and 10, getting ready to go again here with just under 15 minutes to go, and that there being car number 1, which I believe is that's Brando Badoa.
It is. It absolutely is indeed. And yes, as you mentioned, Intrapuvizak, a brilliant move around the outside as well on the opening lap of the sprint to go the long way around at turn number 9, very close to the grass, but it was a chaotic opening lap, and he was a driver who was able to force his way through and make himself move higher up the order. But yes, we are going to see Brando just hoping that he can get a good qualifying in after his crash last time out, which brought out the red flags in Australia. And he's directly ahead, got Gerard G as well, as they all just try and battle for track positions to get themselves into the best window to set a lap time. And of course, when we do get to circuits like Belgium and all of those circuits which have long straights, you will see them all tucking in. And even for Monza, even if it is split once again, then we are going to see that. So GST just going to back off a little bit, let his teammate get up a little bit more higher up the road, and then he'll go pushing around Bahrain International.
Yeah, indeed, and we'll see what they can both do. Of course, Martini Estenchon is leading the way for these next couple of laps, and we're just on board here with Alessandro Giusti as we head our way down towards turn number 1. Of course, a heavy braking zone, very easy to lock up your tyres here into this first corner. Of course, wanting to try and hit the apex a little bit wide there for Giusti, and then going through turn 2 and then back to the right for turn number 3 before heading up the hill with a bit of DRS in towards turn number 4. And of course, our fastest first sector is from Solova 35.058. We'll see what these two can do. And a brilliant view here, I believe, was it with a drone there over turn 4, that brilliant camera view. And then we can see the track here, Omi, really starting to improve, and I'm sure these lap times are going to be all over the place once they head across the line.
They absolutely will. Currently, we have Callum Wojcik, who's going quickest of all in the first sector. So, loads of drivers finding the improvement. We just had the fastest first sector originally that belonged to the man in your picture if you are synced up with us. That is Alessandro Giusti, but it's going to be Callum Wojcik who's managed to take it. And now this, sector 2, that they're currently in, is a vital part of the lap, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Giusti who'll head over the line first out of the 3 we've got in terms of the timings on the graphic. Coming towards sector 2 now is Giusti, 4th fastest at this moment in time, but we expect that to change very, very shortly. Giusti going through sector 2 Purple in sector 2, but what does James Wharton do in that sector alone? Does he go purple and take it away from Gristi? It's not as quick as what Gristi has done, so Gristi is on course to go higher up the grid. Can he get ahead of Nicholas Solov? Callum Foyson's going quick as well, half a second up on what Solov had produced earlier, but the lap times are coming down as we know it. So we're heading over the line. Stenson goes fastest. Gristi goes even quicker. We're 149.9. What James Wharton next in the ART goes up towards 5th place. Not as good in the final set today. It was a green, but not as quick as he had hoped. Callum Foyson goes fastest for Road Motorsports. Superb lap by his standards, and we are waiting for more cars heading over on. This is Taz Interpuvasak for Campos. He's coming towards sector 2 now. He's 4 tenths away from the fastest time. If he knows that he probably isn't going to be the quickest, vitally important if he can get into the top 12 and be on reverse grid pole for tomorrow's sprint race. Watch out for Nicholas Solov, who's not too far behind. He is 600ths of a second away from Callum Foyson's time at that point in the circuit.
Absolutely. Interpuvasak, as you mentioned, needs to be in the top 12 if he wants to find himself moving through. His teammate, Boya, goes to 13th. Interpuvasak does get himself up into the top 12. He's in 9th ahead of Agachukwu. Charlie was, that's more like it for him, as he is behind his teammate, Kamara. Solov was close in the second sector. Has he been able to gain some time in the third to take it away from Voisin? The answer's no, and it's going to be the 4th quickest time for the Red Bull Junior.
Yep, indeed. I think it was a mistake there by Solov heading in towards turn number 13. Well, here we are. This is him in towards turn 10 with a bit of a lock-up there as he heads his way in. Of course, a big lock-up there for Solov. That's certainly causing a flat spot on his front left tyre and costing him probably that pole position spot. As we see here, number 26 heading in towards turn number 8. Also having a bit of a mistake. And the number 26, I believe that is going to be Sagrera. And then we see here the number 5, that being Rafael Kamara, who's just over a tenth and a half away from that pole position. But a very nice snap there from Callum Foyson, of course, making his debut last season. Had a bit of a poor start to the season. The car, the Rodin team didn't do that well. But coming towards the end of the season, I think it was just after Silverstone, and Callum Foyson got himself a podium, and then since then was really, really competitive. And starting here this season, currently on provisional pole with just under 10 minutes to go. Certainly in a really, really strong position, but the lap times, Omi, still really close. Our top 23 separated by just over a second, and the top 30, 1.6 seconds. And unfortunately, my championship winner prediction is last.
Yeah, not going Louis Sharp's way, is it, today as well? But yes, as you mentioned, the gaps are super close. And Callum Foyson, the race that he did manage to score the podium, he actually finished first on the road as well. He got a penalty as well due to passing off the track. But it was that race at Silverstone is one of the most wildest Formula 3 races where he had the better tyres. He was just, there were slow cars around him. He just went slightly off the road in that gate, and that got himself a penalty. Of course, he couldn't give it back because by the time they noted it, he was about 10 seconds up the road due to the weather conditions. So that's how that went. But yes, after that, he came alive, and it was a brilliant performance as well at Spa. Freddie Slater, though, the driver currently in 15th position. If he can upgrade that just by a bit, and we're talking about just by a little bit, just by hundredths of a second, he'll get himself into the top 12 opportunity to show his class
really
tomorrow in our sprint
Slater's
contest.
settling into that Formula 3 car. He has been in the car during the latest test as well, prior to his opportunity that AIX Racing had given to him. Doing a fine job so far, as is this man, Callum Foyson, one of the veterans in the series. He won at Silverstone last year, did Foyson, which was very, very nice to see. In fact, that was at Spa, my apologies, not at Silverstone. I was thinking of a different race, my apologies for that. But Spa was where Foyson had won for Radio Motorsport, and he's doing a fine job so far here. Gristi up there, as is Kamara, building on from what he had achieved in Melbourne, ahead of Solov and Wirtz, who's been able to improve up to 5th place after that lockup he made at turn 10 on one of his runs. Tuppinen, Stromstead, Trumnitz, Ho, Stenshon, Interpuvasak and Ugachukwu occupying that 12th and reverse grid pole for tomorrow's sprint race. But of course, that can all change in the next 7 minutes. We are seeing a replay of Javier Seguera going through turn 13. What does he do here? Does he make a slide. He does make a slide, which sends him out onto the curbs, and I'd imagine that's a track limits violation going over the white line.
That is not what he wants at all, as here we go. We're ticking down. It's time to get drivers back out on the circuit, and it is time to decide who's going to be taking the 2 points for pole and the best view for Grand Prix Sunday from pole position. Roisen's got it for the moment, only by 0.02 of a second to Williams Jr. Giusti. Van Amersfoort watching on as well, as we get the final preparations going on for the teams and drivers as they find a good window to send their car in.
Yep, certainly. Everyone going out together here with a few cars still leaving it a bit longer here. Of course, wanting to go a little bit out of sync and not get involved with the traffic, but the majority of the field all going out at the same time here as we continue on and, well, see who will take pole position. Just under 6 minutes to go. Here's a replay of Lewis Sharp heading into turn 4, of course getting eaten up by the curb, touching the grapple a little bit, heading his way in, and of course that there cost him his lap time, as we do see a few cars here heading out to the hairpin at turn 8, heading in towards turn 9 and 10, and like we discussed earlier on, this section of corners here, 9 and 10, it's crucial for your lap. We've seen many drivers have lockups into here, and I think it's quite common as well. We've seen drivers have lockups on their out laps. It's such a weird, difficult corner. In my opinion, probably one of the most difficult corners on the calendar. It's a really tricky one to get right, but if you can get it right and perfect it, you can gain maybe a couple of tenths over everybody there.
Absolutely. We have the hard stop at turn number 10. That always is very, very interesting as we take a look at Roman Bielinski just being sent out there, getting a little push, getting a little assistance onto this circuit. And he will be out of sync with everyone, but with a bit of clear space, so let's keep an eye out for him. But we're going to be looking to see who's going to be taking the pole position, but also we're also going to be trying to see who's going to be getting themselves in position, provisionally at least, for the reverse grid slots. It all can change overnight if there are any stewarding that needs to be done. Another thing that's been happening, especially in Australia, you would have noticed, penalties are now being applied for both sprint and feature. So that's a little bit of an I think that's a little bit more of an adjustment they've made to punish the drivers in the feature race as well. So they've done that little change, and I wonder if they'll continue on that heading into Bahrain.
That corrects what I was saying earlier about if you impede a driver in qualifying, for instance. They used to just be the sprint race where you get penalised for it, not the feature. Well, now it's both the sprint and the feature, and I think that is actually the right decision, because it can be a bit of a tactical game where you take the punishment and drivers start playing around with the rules a little bit by holding another driver up to favour someone else. Well, thankfully the stewards have clamped down on that, the FIA have clamped down on that to ensure that no one is impeding the drivers. That could make it more important to ensure you don't block anyone or basically cause a collision in previous race, in like another race, for instance, which can contribute to your grid position for the next round. We've got over 3 minutes remaining here. The drivers are on their last ones. I think this is the second prep lap that they are doing. So by the time we get to the end of this one, we should start to see drivers going full pelt for one last time in this qualifying session here in Sakir as the sun continues to set.
Yep, and it'll continue to set as we get into Formula 2 qualifying later on as well. And that will be a brilliant battle for pole position. We'll look to that later on. Right now, though, all eyes, all attention goes to see who's going to be taking it. You've got Rafa Kamara making his way through as well. Let's see whether he can take back-to-back pole positions. And what a way to start his campaign it would be in 2025. Part, of course, of the Ferrari Academy, as is Tuka Tappinen. And those are two drivers who were very close when it came to loads of FRECA races last year in Formula 3. Is Kamara going to be able to take it back? Or is there going to be anyone else? As we have Roisen at the front. We have GST in there as well. And there'll be more drivers who enter themselves who can find the lap time right on this final run.
Yeah, certainly. And I think those around 12th to maybe 20th here have a really big opportunity themselves, because they probably don't have the pace to take pole position, but they certainly have the pace to get around that P12 spot, maybe that top 10, and put themselves on the front of the second row for the sprint race. That is a really big opportunity, because for some drivers we've seen in the past here, in Formula 3 over the past few seasons. All they need is a bit of confidence. Having a sprint race pole position or a top 3, top 5 can give them that confidence they need for the future rounds, knowing that they've got the pace to be near the front. So this could be a big, big story for some of those a little bit further down the field. But we can see here, of course, last race's pole position sitter, Rafael Camara, in that first set today. Let's see what he could do through sector 1. Is he quicker than Voisin? He certainly is here, Romy. Purple in sector 1 by a 10th.5 here over Callum Voisin's time. Could we see back-to-back here for Rafael Camara?
Absolutely a possibility. As we try to see who else is going to be going quickly. We'll keep an eye on our current pole man. Noah Stromstead also pushing on. He's the driver in 7th right now. Kamara's teammate right now will be also looking to try find an improvement. We're going to get loads of changing of the order in a couple of moments time. It's all going to shuffle as Kamara tries to continue on, but it is actually going to be Callum Voisin who's taking it further away from the field. So Kamara needs a response. He needs to go even quicker in this second part of the lap. We are ticking down on the clock. 45 seconds to go with Rafa Kamara as he makes his way, and he's improving still by very nearly 4.5 tenths of a second. This looks fast for Kamara. Stromstead is down just a little bit on Callum Voisin, but that benchmark is about to be taken even further from Rafa Kamara. To the final corner. On this circuit he goes. Let's see whether the man chasing back-to-back pole positions will be able to do it. Tim Travinett finds the time for 5th. Dominguez into 14th as we have Bruno Del Pino to the top of the table. Incredible stuff from him. Kamara beats that time by 5.5 tenths of a second. Who else is going to be able to find a lap time? Stromstead is in 3rd. Tappinen will be coming across the line as well. And keep an eye on Callum Voisin as Tappinen gets to P3. Here comes Callum Voisin though, trying to get back to pole position in Formula 3. Can he do it across the line? Oh, he's missed out. It's the front row for Callum Voisin. Noah Leon's in 10th. The checkered flag is flying. GSD will be trying to find a response. He's the driver who was 2nd. Now is in 7th. Dufek is in 8th. Boyer finds himself to 5th. Interprovizak gets to reverse grid pole as it stands. GSD is not finding the time that he needs. Sharp misses out on reverse grid pole. He's into 13th. The dreaded P13 at this stage. Charlie Wurz, great time for him to get into 3rd position. And now we take a look to see whether GSD can find any form of improvement as Ho gets to 4th.
Yeah, Ho up to 4th place. USC coming towards the line, as is Martinius Denshon on good laps, but not good enough to be at the front of the field. USC just needs to... Yeah, so USC over the line, not good enough for him. Stays where he is. Denshon goes to P11. What about James Wharton?
Let's see whether he can find a time. Freddie Slater P10. Incredible stuff. Wharton is in 19th. And that's exactly the performance that we were talking about. But Trident and Kamara have delivered once again to take pole position. It's back-to-back poles for him. Belinsky is in 19th position. Still a few lap times coming to a close. But what a performance also from Freddie Slater to get into the top 10. And he'll start in P3. Right behind the 2 high-tech drivers of Stenshorn and Dufek for tomorrow's race.
Yeah, certainly. Really good lap times there from many of the drivers, but great there for Dufek, of course. Being on that reverse grid pole, Stenshorn behind there, and then, of course, Slater and Justy rounding out the top 4 for our sprint race tomorrow. But, of course, brilliant from Rafael Kamara. Of course, was looking a little bit dicey in the first part of qualifying. Wasn't right up there, but that final lap, which had to count, he got it right and got himself back onto pole. Of course, there we can see Callum Voisin going to 2nd, and then Charlie Wirtz renegade the top 3 with Ho in P4. Absolutely brilliant. But of course, Slater in 10th place. That is a really brilliant lap for him. Of course, his first race, or first qualifying here in FIA Formula 3. Certainly going to be proud of that one.
Great performance from Ho, the reigning champion of the Euro Cup. Let's hear from Kamara.
John, bravo, 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 well done. Bravo, Jaco, good job. Thank you.
Wow. Kamara is absolutely extraordinary. But Ho as well, who is the first Singaporean driver in Formula 3, definitely getting his nation up there and doing it in a great way. It was a great time as well from Bruno Del Pino to be quickest for a moment. But you're also going to get GSD, Soloff, Stromstead, some more drivers inside the top 10. Bit of disappointment for Prema. They haven't got anyone in the top 10. They all find themselves outside with Leon being best at 14th position in that squad. But it just shows you how highly competitive this Formula 3 championship is, Tom.
Yep, unfortunately, Tom has disappeared. I think Discord itself might have had an issue because I also went away for a second or two. But yeah, really good session there in Formula 3. Of course, Kamara back onto the pole. I've got to say, not surprising. And that is rare to say in Formula 3. There's never really a driver which we can say is pretty much guaranteed to take pole. But Kamara, with the way he's been so far, I can see him getting pole for the next few rounds as well. He's a really, really strong driver. But of course, he's had his issues in the races, of course, not all being his fault. But that's something he's going to have to fix if he wants to be a championship contender. And I've got to say, I didn't notice it until just, but the livery there on Tappen's car, really, really nice, isn't it? That black and red Ferrari livery.
Yep, absolutely. They're also the ART colours to some degree as well that they are running with. This was into Pruvazak with a major lockup heading into turn 10, which is exactly what we talked about, Richie.
Yep, indeed. As we see there into turn 10, a few cars still having lockups, and that being a 21 there, going very, very wide out of there, that being Ramos, and then of course a number 29 as well, also going really wide. I think that being Lacorte heading in towards turn 10. Difficult moments then. Of course, in the race, it's also going to be crucial because they're going to get those tyres worn. They're going to be running for a lot longer, and that's going to cause issues, isn't it? And I expect we'll have cars going side by side there, and for some of those that might be a little bit less confident, it's going to cause issues.
Yeah, we have seen the tyres be a major factor in the races before, but it's going to be close. It's going to be so tight. As I mentioned in practice earlier, the smallest margin between our top two in a race has been 5.5 seconds. So, sorry, the biggest margin, I should say, has been 5.5 seconds. And that tells you how competitive Formula 3 racing around here is. And then with these regulations car, it gets even better. Let's confirm our results. It is Rafa Kamara taking back-to-back poles and the 2 points that go with it. Callum Boyden is in second. Charlie Wers in third with a great performance. That's the same applies for Ho and Del Pino, who are in fourth and fifth. Chapman in sixth. Stromsted's in seventh. And then it's Solov, Giuste, and Freddie Slater impressing and living up to the talent that we know he has. Stenshorn is in 11th, then it's Dufek, Travanitz, Leon, Segura, Bradua, and then into Pruvazak, Sharp, Bielinski, and Boyer, who will be our top 20. And if you are outside the top 12, you start how you qualify for both the races this weekend. Ugo Gochiku is in 21st, Teofil Niles in 22nd, then it's Dominguez, Wharton, Lacorte, Van Hopen, G, Zagazeta, Marian Angeli, and a disappointment for our race winner from Australia in the sprint race, who ends it in 30th and last of all of the 30 drivers in this qualifying session. Well, can we get final thoughts then, Richie?
Yes, certainly. My camera's disappeared, unfortunately. I don't know what's happened there, but no. Really good session. Of course, Kamara back on pole. Very, very happy for him. But that sprint race with that reverse grid is going to make it really interesting. I can't wait till we come back tomorrow for our sprint race.
Tom?
Apologies for the hiccup at my end, but I'm really looking forward to see what Formula 3 has to offer for the rest of the weekend with the sprint race tomorrow and the feature race on Sunday. Rafa Kamara carrying where he left off in Melbourne, but tomorrow and Sunday is where the talking is going to speak higher volumes for him and for the others.
F2 is coming up later on today, but for Formula 3 we will go sprinting tomorrow. Join us then when we hold our sprint contest to see who's going to be our third race winner of the season.